everyone. Welcome back to the Art2Life podcast. Super excited to introduce you to my guest today. But before I do that, I just want to kind of set this up a little bit, because when I started Art2Life way back when, I was really having a great time teaching people about art making and color and the kind of the practical aspects of art making. But what I learned early on was that those are really important, but it's more around the mindset, and it's more around ways of being that in the end make all the difference in the world into the kind of work you make and the speed at which you can improve. So the question, right, was, how can we kind of optimize ourselves for a life of creativity? How do we need to be in the world to be our best selves, to be the artists, and to find our way? And what I came up with, and why Barbara Groth, who's my guest today, is sitting here, is because I found one of the most powerful ingredients of a creative life is curiosity and willingness to change and an openness to experiencing wonder. So a few years ago, I was on a trip to Marfa, Texas, and I met Barbara, and I heard rumor about a school that she started called the Nomadic School of Wonder. So you can imagine that piqued my interest. So we're going to be diving into this. Barbara's made a life study of wonder and curiosity and play and actually really flow, which is really what's behind everything I'm interested in and what we really teach, and why the people that come through Art2Life make the progress they do. So let me just give a little background on Barbara. So she has spent 30 years pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the fields of emerging technologies, human experience design, storytelling, and social impact. She's the founder and CEO of Big Buddha Baba Productions in LA. They designed experiences for the likes of Walt Disney, Pixar, Google, Museum of Science and Industry, LA Contemporary Museum of Art, the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then recently, Barbara was the senior vice president of Meow Wolf, which is that incredible immersive experience that is this art experience that's based in Santa Fe. And if any of you guys have experienced that, it's amazing, and was kind of a leader breakout in the world of immersive art experiences. So, and then in 2015, she found the school of the Nomadic School of Wonder, which we'll be diving into. So there's so much here to dive into. But Barbara, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to share all you're doing with everybody.
Such a pleasure, Nick. Thank you so much for this invitation. We share so many community members in common who go to Art2Life, who show up in Nomadic School of Wonder. So I feel like someday we're going to have like a Freaky Friday where we have to like swap, and I do your experience and you do our experience.
Yes, I would love that. And I love how you've zeroed in on awe and wonder. And that, in fact, like prompted this for you to just focus on this. Can you just kind of speak to how you came to that and why you founded the Nomadic School of Wonder? What is it exactly?
Well, what we do is we take people on adventures in awe in the world. We go to small towns, small remote towns where our presence really matters. And we create what an artist who works with us, Kate McLaughlin, calls sacred shenanigans in these places. So we root our experiences in nature, art, community, and play. They're designed by artists. They're around a theme, and we explore that theme through the senses. So really, it's really kind of like a traveling troupe that gets to have some fun and invite guests along. We co-create with guests, and then we celebrate that co-creation together. And it could be a day, weekend, or a full week. But really, kind of wonder and awe is sort of like I don't know, like maybe the MacGuffin or the gateway drug to presence. It's really an
Yes.
invitation into what is it like to be present, to be awake and aware. It's what Mary Oliver says: pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And
Ah,
the
love that.
poet Mary Oliver. And so it's really so much about that art of noticing, which I've seen you in action when you're in noticing mode when we were in Marfa together. So it's really about that invitation in, and then all of these things kind of ripple out from that. But the origin story for the Nomadic School of Wonder came around being with people who were dying. I went through a trilogy of people in my life that
Mm,
I had the privilege of being that person that's with them as they leave the earthly plane. And it was something about the time leading up to that, the moment of it, and afterwards, which I felt not only kind of the grief and the sadness, but also this kind of awe and wonder around what it is to be human, right? And there was an extra special presence with them and with me when we were going through end of life together. And of course, I couldn't go on that journey with them. So I'm left back here and I'm like, well, what do I do with this? It's almost like I had a like the veil was lifted and I had a
wow.
and I looked into that moment in those moments and I thought, maybe I work with people who are dying through like a hospice experience. And then I thought, well, what if the focus is more on people who are perhaps not fully living? That
Mm,
how do we bring people into a presence so that they get into a practice of being present and aware and
yes.
really realizing that this is a wondrous world with all its chaos and craziness, that there's wonder right outside of our windows, right outside our door. So,
I think of I think of art making as really what we're learning to do is become more sensitive, more present. It's really an invitation to be present. And when you're making art, when you can drop into that uh, all your concerns, the worries about the past and the worries about the future, it kind of drops away when you're doing it. And so what's crazy is when you pull that off, it's like meditating. You kind of grab it for a second. That's when you make your best art because it's most authentic and different. And so, this idea of presence is really a strategy for making amazing art. So I love how you're I guess you artists, you're working with artists, but you're just opening the door for people to increase their awareness, really. But I'm sure you get artists who participate, who come as well, or anybody, right? This is just for anybody, correct?
yes, it is. And we do have both artists that we collaborate. There are experienced designers, as the ones who are kind of coming up with the crazy shenanigans to engage guests. But then there's a lot of artists that do come to the Nomadic School of Wonder in creative organizations and teams, like Ivy Ross's team at Google. That I've heard that interview you did with Ivy and Susan a
Yeah.
few episodes ago, which was wonderful. So there is a lot of creative folks that come in, and I think that our the way that I feel like we can help them is just to help them to remember what they
Hmm.
have known at one time. And also, there's this theme that a lot of us work in this area of getting people out of their heads and into the intelligence of
Yes.
their hearts and their hands, and letting you mentioned the word flow, and it's really about that. Like, how do we get people out of their heads? So things that are like a little too clever or a little too thinky, I'll actually say, hey, there's lots of things out there that do that, but we are about embodied play and joy, celebration, creativity, and connecting the head, the heart, and the hands into expression in the
Hmm.
world.
Yeah. I love the word embodied, and that really is we do a thing at a workshop where we do these different practices, and one of them is where we actually kind of almost like a meditation where we work from that place, literally can change the experience in the room and the work that comes out of that when you're more present, when you're really feeling it. And this is, it's a felt sense, so it's not something that you can see. But can you speak to, like, how do you, I mean, we all have embodied experiences. We all know what we feel like, but we're in our head a lot. And like, how do you get uh, participants to drop into this? Like, how do you describe it? Because this is something I'm often trying to describe and helping artists with in workshops. So I'm just curious how you optimize that, how you set that up so it's accessible.
Well, we really focus on activating the senses, so
Hmm.
using our full human interface. Because if you think about it, we don't often do that in the course of a day, right? Or we're not aware that we're doing it around taste, around smell, around sound.
Mm.
Certainly the visual. So I liken it to kind of an acupuncture treatment. We activate these moments in this interface, the human interface, and by doing so, people begin to recall and remember. Could be a scent that reminds them of something. It could be that they just get lost in that flow that you're talking about because they have their hands in clay and they're making art with Judy Tuwaldt-Stiwa and Santa Fe with us. It just depends on that, but it's really sensory activation, and then also somehow getting them into that state of maybe the senses that we don't talk about so much, the sixth sense, the intuitive, like getting them into a
Yeah.
little bit more of a space where they trust what's coming through them,
Yes.
and they don't try to edit it. And then we also do it through play. Like play is in some way intimidating. Like, hey, let's make art can be intimidating for people. Hey, let's play can be intimidating. But we do it in a way that it feels so like delicious that you just can't help but participate. And also, we give you the option not to participate in that reverse psychology. And then people often, the ones who are like, no, no, I don't want to play, they actually end up playing the most. So we do embodied play, and it could be as simple, as like, what did you like to play as a 10-year-old? Nick, what did you like to play when you were 10?
Yeah. Right. Well, I
What
made, I
what did you
made,
like to play?
well, I would take, we had this gravel patio. It was just gravel, but small pebbles. And it was big, and I would create cities because I could, with my hands, I could make the roads, like take away the gravel and smooth it around. So I made airports and, little houses, and it was like Nick's world. But that
I
was,
love
that
it.
was really fun. It's funny because I own that house now, and I'm restoring it, and I'm in this patio that's being redone. I'm finding all the old toys that like from my childhood, like they're buried in the dirt, like the airplanes and stuff. But so it's really front and center, this idea of like, oh my God, this is where I used to play out here.
Oh, how incredible to have that
Yeah.
environment for you. And I saw, for those listening, your hands were moving, you were making kind of these little shapes. And if you just get into like what the play, your play movement from a 10-year-old, could have been you've been playing frisbee or you threw a
Hmm.
ball or you were creating. And I've never heard what I just heard from you in terms of building from pebbles. And then just by getting into that, I saw just you talking about it, your face changed. You kind of went into this kind of childlike sense. And it can be as simple as that, an invitation over a Zoom
Yeah.
conversation to say, hey,
Uh-huh.
can you get into your play body? To activating your imagination and remembering maybe a moment of wonder from your childhood that you were in, and then really get into that, and feel it in your body, not just as a memory, but feel it in your body.
Yeah.
So there's just some really easy ways to conjure wonder and play and invite people into play.
I love, your job that you have created for yourself is possibly the coolest job in the world. I mean, the way you describe it. And I actually ended up meeting Kyle Johnson because I
Yes.
heard and saw some of the work he did. You did an experience out in Fogo Island, which I'd love to hear about. That was amazing. I saw a photograph, but then I saw his work, and I ended up interviewing him for this podcast. But the way, a big part of his work is bringing people together and making stuff. That's his work. He actually loves collaboration. And it really opened my eyes as to that's such a valid, wonderful way to be making art, together. And I think the destination workshops I do, it's just about making art with friends. It's something happens when we're together that is more powerful than if we were just by ourselves. And I think most of your experiences are in a group, or are you working over Zoom, or
Yeah.
are you in person?
Yeah, we're in both, but groups. And I agree with you. There's nothing better than kind of playing
Yeah.
together. And one of my favorite things, because I do feel like I have a little bit of a fairy tale job, is that I get to invite people like Kyle Johnson or Conan Selesnik, the artist Conan
Uh,
Selesnik, and others, and I say, "Hey, here's our theme. What would you like to do?" And they come up with crazy things, and I get to say, "Great, let's do that." And it's by far my favorite part of the job is just saying yes to artists who are creative, inventive, who just delight. Like Kyle is like he's like Tom Hanks from Big. He's like a big kid that
yeah.
has
Yeah.
this incredible talent, but delights in not only his own creative process, but in activating and witnessing other people's creative process, very much like you, Nick, where
Yeah.
it's like if you had to trade one or the other, I think that
Hmm.
it's hard because this idea of being able to have this talent to activate it in other people as well as experience it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's addicting to see other people get it. And I mean, that is what we feed off at Art2Life with all the coaches and everyone. When we see people who were stuck, who then see what's possible, and then they're going, we have a Slack channel, and it's just constant, did you see what he did? Did you see what she said? And, so I think it's just really because this is the human experience, and the possibility for all of us is extraordinary. And we kind of, when we're by ourselves, we don't see that as easily as when we see it in other people. And
Yeah, I think if we only saw ourselves through other people's eyes, like if we could truly do that, I think it would be pretty astonishing and overwhelming for people, when you get to
yeah,
really when friends reflect back to you what they see that maybe you don't see in yourself. It's a beautiful,
yes,
beautiful witnessing, beautiful way to celebrate each other.
yeah, and I think it's actually most of what I'm teaching around art making is, it comes from the self. It's not about what you're seeing on Instagram. It's not, and really, and I love that because that's the domain of the self, is something we can control. It's not, you have everything you need, but there is something about that reflection that we need, that from others, to actually go further. And so it's tricky, but I absolutely get that we always think our work is not as good as others, but everyone else is looking around what everyone else is doing and seeing the beauty and the magic in in what other people do. And we're not the best judge of our own creative expression sometimes, which is, it's a good thing, but it's also it holds us back.
Yeah, it's what makes us human. I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
that kind of whatever, you might want to call it a limiting perspective. But it also gives us the gift of, humbleness and being able to kind of
yeah,
continue to stretch ourselves and everything else like that. Yeah. But it's
yeah.
it's a it's a gas to work with artists, like that is our model, is that we work with artists as part of our traveling troupe, and then we co-create with local artists such as on
Wow.
Fogo Island and other small towns. And those local artists that we call wonder makers, they could be the pie lady of Pie Town too. They could be Kathy Knapp. They could be a pie maker, right? Like who's to say, this word art becomes so big, and it's really about people who bring delight and in making more wonder in our lives and
Ah,
creating more
it's,
opportunities for us to expand what we think is possible. You know.
when I visited Meow Wolf a number of years ago, and it was sort of revolutionary actually, but that began with some artists just wanting to work together, and there's we're better together kind of thing, and showing their work. And can you just speak to a little bit about what it is now, and what you learned from that, and what we're seeing is kind of extraordinary. It's just this model now of immersive experiences.
Truly, and it came out of, a bunch of artists who were goofing around together, like
Yeah.
just playing, artists who were playing and did so for many, many years. A lot of people feel like Meow Wolf came out of nowhere, but for about 12 years.
Oh
And
wow.
then couldn't find a model that really worked for them. They went from more kind of they started going into a more dimensional form in their artwork and in their pop-up shows, and it was like, well, that wasn't exactly what you're going to find in Santa Fe, for galleries and things like this. So they created an opportunity for themselves and convinced George R. R. Martin to buy a bowling alley for them. And then what's sort of been called, they started nailing trash to walls in that bowling alley. And they all had canvases. There was about 100 plus artists who were part of the first Meow Wolf. I came on after the first Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, called the House of Eternal Return. And everybody had a bit of canvas that they could play with in a dimensional form, and that's what they did. And they did it through an incredible collaborative, inclusive process of being able to make something out of nothing. And then the funny stories is, then they opened it, right? And they realized, oh my gosh, now we have to run it. So the same artists who made this were the ones taking the tickets, serving the
Oh
drinks, doing
wow.
all of this.
Wow.
And so it was a big learning curve, from the stories I've heard, and I've heard a lot of them. And then I came aboard in 2019 for a few years to head up the creative division, and to really help kind of utilize some of the learnings that a lot of us have had in this world of creating in immersive entertainment, immersive experiences, so that they wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel each time. And so now there's a Meow Wolf experience in Denver, in Las Vegas. A new one is opening this summer in Texas, in Grapevine. So yeah, they're going to malls. It's an incredible. To me, it's like such an incredible adventure of bringing people together who perhaps don't feel like they belong in the world, whether it's the local artists they work
Hmm.
with, whether it's the staff that's operating these. It's real. I just did a tour around a number of Meow Wolves last month, and I have to say it's beautiful to behold how the art then becomes an experience for guests, and that the the team members that operate the experience are really sort of adding a whole nother layer of art to that engagement.
I
So
love, because artists have always just been outliers, but here's this kind of putting artists forward right into society, mainstream society, creating a thing. And I just think it's really it's teaching about collaboration, because I wonder, when I think about it, how this wasn't strategized by a CEO or something. We're going to create a theme park, or we're going to, you know, do something for tourists in Santa Fe. This is collaborative. It's the same way you work, letting people be themselves, and look what happens. Like how you describe. I bring artists together, and then we generate cool ideas like that's not the way things are usually structured. And it just makes the most amazing art,
It
Uh,
does because it's alive, right? It's
yeah,
alive. And,
yeah.
having worked for years for a number of clients that I won't mention, but by the time something opened, that kind of spontaneity, the joy, was kind of wrung out. You had a little bit of the essence of it, but you
Hmm.
didn't have the full potency. And I think that that is the magic behind Meow Wolf, is that aliveness. And the other magic is this idea of portals, and that Meow Wolf is a lot about portals. You go through a refrigerator and something else that you don't really know what worlds you're entering. But one of the founders, Sean Diani, says that the best portal, the most important and the most significant portal, is the portal that leads out from Meow Wolf to the real world. Because
Ah,
if they've done their job right, they have shifted how you perceive the world. So when
ah.
you exit, perhaps you're looking at your everyday life in a different way.
Yes, it's about transformation in the end, right? Of how we see the
Hmm.
world and the power of imagination. Yeah, that's amazing. To that, and maybe for our listeners, you know, Meow Wolf is it's basically like an enormous. I guess it was a bowling alley, but imagine just 100 artists creating a world, and then you come in, and there's a story and there's an experience, but everyone's experience is kind of different. It's just I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's indescribable, but it is. It creates such wonder, and you spend a couple of hours going through all these different experiences and through refrigerators and into other openings, and it was like actually going into someone's art. We look at a painting and we have a little glimpse of a world, but to go into it was so amazing, just to immerse ourselves. And you spoke earlier of the all the senses, right? And i really I really noticed that there, the smell, the temperature differences, the textures, it's so amazing.
Yeah, it's really wonderful because it's about really about the unexpected and how you encounter the
Mm,
unexpected. And we're hardwired in our brains, according to neuroscientists like Bo Lotto, who we work with, who studies wonder, to really dislike uncertainty, right? The unexpected.
yeah.
But it's through the medium of play that we welcome it, right? So it's a really wonderful avenue into delighting in the unexpected. So it actually helps rewire our brains. I'm not a neuroscientist, I only work with them, but it helps us to really, that's why when we leave, we are shifted. We're shifted not in only our imagination, but we've actually rewired our brains.
Wow. Yes. Yeah.
And same with what you do, and same
Mhm.
with the Nomadic School of Wonder. We're all in the same we're actually doing the same thing from different angles, you know?
Yes. Yes. No, totally. So let's dive into some of the amazing experience. I know you use you've used wild horses in some of these experiences. I'd love to hear about that because animals. I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah. So what we kind of look to our teachers of being artists, yes, also a wild Mustang or a herd of wild Mustangs, spinner dolphins, a forest. You know,
Mm,
it's really the night sky. So we really look to nature, as Andy Goldsworthy says, we are nature, right? We really look to nature and the wider ecosystem of living things on our planet as great teachers. So we do this experience in southern Utah. With a wild Mustang herd. They were adopted through a program for the Bureau of Land Management, and it's in a small town in southern Utah that a good friend of ours discovered. Leslie McGurk, the artist Leslie McGurk, went there and she had this great experience. And she called me. She couldn't even talk afterwards. She goes, I can't talk, but we got to do this. So then we're like, okay, let's bring a group. Let's go do this. And so what we do is we learn about leadership, presence, talk about presence, when you're with this very large being, magnificent being. We learn about how to lead these horses, but not in the way that we might think we even like lead perhaps even a dog on a leash, right? It's really about presence, intention, body movement to be able to create a dance with these Mustangs. And we also work with a horse sanctuary here in Santa Fe by the name of A Chance of a Lifetime Horse Sanctuary. Very similar approach. And we've had people who are well-known leaders in the world who have come to these horse experiences and they said, "Oh my gosh, like I have learned more
Yeah.
from this horse than I have from, however many business trainings I've gone through. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just being open to the fact that wisdom comes in a number of different forms in our lives.
Yeah. I was actually gifted a equine therapy session with a horse. And I actually hadn't spent much time around horses, I mean, I did the occasional horseback ride with the kids kind of thing. And it was the most revealing experience. I discovered things about myself that, and I think what it was is that the horses, what I wasn't aware of is that they can absolutely feel your come from, the energy you have, if you're comfortable, if you're insecure, if you're loving, and they either saddle up to that or they politely excuse themselves. And so it was just amazing, this experience with this horse. Like I was really good with the horse close up. I'm thinking this horse is I'm made for this. Like I love people, and I got right up to the horse and the horse came up to me and I just felt so like, clearly I don't have any problems because this horse loves me. And there was the therapist coach kind of watching, and then I had an exercise where I had to encourage the horse from a distance, though, to do some things and to move around. And so I was pretty far away, and she gave me a rope, and I had to kind of like, come on, horse, we're going to walk around. And I was out there by myself, and I was doing some things, and the horse was looking at me, and I realized that it was kind of embarrassing because I'm by myself trying to do something, and the horse just kind of was noticing that I was self-conscious. And then the horse didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I got more frantic with all these motions trying to get him to do something. And the horse just sort of looked away. And the therapist, she said, where else in your life does this show up? And anyway, it was really amazing. They're so sensitive. And yeah, so I get it. I understand. I learned a ton that day.
I love that story. Yeah, it's the time where you think you should do more is when you should just become a tree, just get more rooted again. And
Yeah.
that's what one of the teachers here talk of Erica and Yost at A Chance of a Lifetime is just become a tree, just get rooted, just get
Yeah.
recentered. Because if you're all over the place,
Yeah. Which is totally
they pick
me.
it
Yeah.
up, and their energy
Yeah.
fields are so much larger than ours, and their hearts are,
Really?
I think, 15 times bigger than ours, or 13 times bigger than ours. So they really pick up on misalignment. I would say not being aligned, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And then our mantra often with the horses is "You're safe with me." When we work with the Wind Horse herd in southern Utah, "You're safe with me. You're safe with me," because we're seen as predators too, right? These are
Mm.
horses that know humans as predators.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Right. Right.
so it's a powerful experience. And I don't know if you did any art afterwards, but spending some time with horses and then doing some creative expression is a really great combo.
I can look at someone's art because what I do is I look at people's art, and I help them improve and make it more personal and everything. And I can see this in my own art, and I can often see it, when I'm trying too hard, uh, it just makes a certain kind of work that only takes you so far. And that's how I think about this, trying too hard, and ego comes into it. Then the work becomes about you trying too hard. Whereas flow isn't that at all. Flow is you're the furthest away from that aspect. You're just being natural yourself. And if you can do that, then the expression is authentic and kind of different and amazing and certainly interesting. And so, yeah, that I just had no idea that horses have that capacity, and probably all animals. But yeah,
We have a moment in the experience where, we often, especially when we're in a herd, we're like, oh, I'd love to work with that horse. Like we have an agenda. Like, oh, I particularly have a boyfriend there by the name of Shoshone, who's like the David Bowie of the herd, that I love. But Shoshone's very, very shy. So we have a moment in our experience with groups where the horse picks you uh, from the herd. You just stand up, against the fence in the corral, and the horse that feels like it needs to work with you comes up to you. Sometimes it's the horse that you think you need to work with, but sometimes it's not. So again, it's another kind of surrendering to,
yeah.
getting away our agendas and our egos and just surrendering to the moment. And everybody walks away getting the horse medicine that they need.
Yeah. You spoke of there's things, when you said something like stars and night sky, and I've often described when I'm making my art and when it's going great, or I'm thinking about making it in the best way possible, what gets me excited, and I feel this when I see people that are about to break through, but about possibility, that the possibility for the next thing, like there's faith involved, but there's a wonder, and I describe it like you have a house, and you can have a window, and the window can have drapes in front of it, or you can have a window that looks out to, but when you have a window or a door that's open and all that's there is a night sky, that when you step out into that, and it's like stepping off a high dive. There's a little bit of fear, but there's an energy and an excitement and a huge possibility. And there's things about the world, experiences and things we see, at least this has been my experience, and this happened last night, seeing the moon when we were driving, and all of a sudden time has stopped, and it's like, oh my God, like, look
Hmm.
at that, or look at that sky, or the redwood tree, or, of course, this experience happens in nature, but sometimes somebody says something, or I just find there's these moments in the day that if I'm more in the sort of art kind of way of being, that I'm moved, literally, like my emotions are moved, and I'm lifted, and I don't know how to describe it, but do you know what I mean? Like there's just
I
things that
totally know
wake
what
us
you
up.
mean.
You're making those experiences, but I don't
Yeah,
know what they are exactly. But there's some mystery, there's some mischievousness in it. There's some we're gonna go wreak havoc. We're gonna go sneak away, and I don't know, like what is this stuff we're doing that wakes people up?
it's yeah, it's so you have such a great way of describing these indescribable kind of moments. And today I was doing kind of wandering and wondering on my walk, and it's really about paying attention to your senses. Sometimes
Mm,
when you walk, just close your eyes. Just stand still, close your eyes, and
hmm.
we take people on this acoustic ecology experience with Gordon Hempton, who's an acoustic ecologist who's preserving the world's quiet places. And he says, listen to the faintest sound that you can hear. Now
Wow.
listen to the farthest sound. So there's sort of a threshold and then a distance, right? And just by doing that, it's like opening up your aperture of what you hear, because our ears are focused on kind of these more punctuated sounds. We're not really hearing everything that's there. So some of it is just being still or taking a walk, but becoming aware. Today I was aware of the water that was flowing because of the snow melt, and the leaves that are shimmering. And it is like you said, it's like putting on more of a your art presence, like the
Yeah.
noticing of the magic in the
Yes.
world, because it's
Yes.
that quote, about sharpening our senses, right? It's about the world's a magical place. I forget how it goes, but it's all about sharpening our senses to
Yeah.
have that revealed to us. And
Yeah.
the thing about it is, you don't have to go to Iceland and see the Northern Lights, which we took a group on. You don't even have to go to the horses. You don't have to do any of this. To me, it's like activating that. So when you come back, that you have this way of perceiving the world in its fuller, more expanded presence. That's really what it's about. So often wonder and awe is seen as these spectacles, and I
Yeah.
think sometimes it's the wrong place to look. I mean, that's great. That's wonderful, but it's not sustainable to be in like spectacle mode all the time. So I really look for, and we try to emphasize the kind of small wonder, the mushroom coming up out of the
Yeah.
Santa Cruz redwoods or in the Hoh rainforest, the little moments of wonder that are throughout our day, if we
Mm.
would just become present and spend less time, doing that thing that humans do, whether it's worrying or just thinking, overthinking. Yeah.
Do you find that my experience has been is that things happen maybe to me or something comes along and I call it the Zen stick, something happens and sometimes they're challenges, the car accident or the whatever, some experience that is uh, it becomes bigger than life. And it's like you're supposed to listen to it. There's an important lesson in there. There's a wake up uh, kind of moment, and if you don't take it, then something else will come that's a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, and but sometimes the presence, you're called to your presence because um, of difficulty, like it's not always just like, oh my God, I saw a sunset. It's like, oh my God, my like the birth of my daughter. Well, that was beautiful, but also some of when she got really sick, like that's the worst. And when I've had accidents or when I've lost people in my life, this just, man, it just brings you to presence. So it's interesting how there's these awe-inducing experiences that wake us up, but then there's also just life that wakes us up. It just seems like all things point to becoming present. Does that make sense?
Completely. And like I said, the inciting incident for bringing the nomadic school of wonder into the world was death, right? And
Yeah,
the
right.
and so I agree with you, especially that thing where it comes back bigger and better and bigger and better until you get the message. And the message often is a simple message, which is to kind of slow down, become aware, connect, make sure that you're prioritizing what matters most, remember that this is a precious gift that
Yeah.
this is something to celebrate. Dr. Keltner in his book Awe, he's the psychologist, professor of psychology at Berkeley, at UC Berkeley, and he wrote a book on awe that came out about 6 months ago. And he says that one of the biggest motivators that people have when it comes to awe, amplifiers of awe, is actually witnessing people's moral beauty. So an act of
Oh.
courageousness, right?
Mm.
So if somebody does something courageous, and normally that courageous is because something is challenging and they've reached out, they've connected, they somehow have done something more courageous. And he said that's the number one experience of awe, is witnessing moral beauty. And yes, there's nature, there's music, there's all these other elements. So I agree with you. It's not just all the kind of up with people, peace, love, and happiness
Yeah.
spectacle of awe, right? It's
Yes.
often
Yes.
that marriage of, you know, the more heightened experiences with the very earthy experiences. And to me, it's like a dance with mystery, the mystery, right? It's like
Yeah.
this great mystery that we're a part of.
Yeah. And answering that question, which, when we trying to learn our way in our art, how do we diagnose where we are, looking at what we've made and what happens, and trying to understand what is made possible by what is happening, because it's always changing, and I think that's just such a beautiful kind of reframe to think that we're on a journey of a possibility that the more we experience, the more lessons we learn, the more we're able to take that and move our art, our expression, and our whole beings forward. It's like we're the piece of art, we're the work of art, ultimately. And we make things, like you're an artist and you make these experiences. And right now I'm making these paintings, but that's not really the most important part. It's who we are and who we're becoming and how the people around us are learning and experiencing from the impact of what we're making. Because I think you're right. I am so I get so much energy from seeing the people in our programs progress. It's the best part of my life.
Yeah, I think that that you described that just then is that I think when I lose sight of where I am in this dance is when I forget that I'm not doing it alone, like that there's a co-creation that's happening, whatever you want to call it, your
Yeah,
unconscious,
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it. When I think, oh, I'm just doing my thing and it's my thing and oh, it all depends on me. But when I realize that I'm in a process of co-creation, that's what it's about, and that it's all about, trusting what emerges from that
Mm-hmm.
emergence, that edge of just, not
Yeah.
exactly sure where something's going and trusting it, which
Yes.
is to me, you call it the flow. To me, that is that embodied goosebumpy feeling like, oh, we are right in this dance. This is what
Yes.
we're here to be doing in our lives,
Totally. It's that lesson that, we all have our reasons why we haven't been as successful as we wanted, or challenges. But if you really think about it, it's like, well, maybe, maybe the reason that you flunked out of art school or you had to become a lawyer your whole life, or whatever the things are that, the different circuitous route you took to get here, maybe it was perfect. Maybe this is going to help you make the next thing is as a summation of everything you've ever done. And it's all part of what you get to make. And I think that's a really good way to think about it, that you're not behind at all. You're just where you should be.
Yeah, it's sort of, I have to also remember that perhaps the universe is conspiring in my favor rather than
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
Like I think
Yeah.
often we feel like, that happened, oh, that happened, this happened, oh, I wanted to do this. But it is, and I know it sounds a little woo-woo, trusting where you are and you're exactly
Hmm.
where you need to be. But there is something when you take that approach that allows for the next thing to emerge rather than being in that kind of
Yeah.
place of like being stuck in life happening to you rather than it being again that co-creative dance.
Yeah. That
So
life's happening and your art is happening through you.
yeah, so beautiful. I can't wait to go on one of your experiences. It's really been at
Yeah.
the top of my list.
Well, we'll
So
have to do
I'm going
that.
to be signing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ah,
And
um, so listen, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, but can you give us some taste of some things you're conjuring up coming? And you guys, there'll be links in the show notes of all these places and the books and all the things. But what's coming up? I just love your job, man. I think you got the
thank
best
you. The
job in the
feeling's
world.
mutual, Nick. Yeah, the
Yeah,
feeling's mutual. So we go back to these same small towns, these same experiences.
really.
So it's an ongoing relationship. We've been around 8 years now. So we'll be going back to wild horses and holy cows in southern Utah. We'll be hosting groups out here at A Chance of a Lifetime Horse Sanctuary. We bring creative teams from Google and other places, Meow Wolf, into week long and weekend experiences. My favorite thing, one of the favorite things that we're going to be doing this fall is we're going to go back into the Hoh rainforest and learn the art of listening with acoustic ecologist Gordon Hempton, who has one of the largest libraries of natural sounds in the world. And he's going to do a week long training for those on the Wonder Team. And then I'm going to Paris, and we are hosting our first sort of city wonder experience, partnering with the Hemingway family, with Ernest Hemingway's family. And we're going to do an adventure, Hemingway adventure in Paris. And it's all around the art of noticing. It's
Ah,
really about what would it be like in 1920s Paris and modern day Paris? How do we weave those together, and have some shenanigans with our artist Kanin Selesnik, but also how do we get into that artist who sat at cafes and noticed everything, who walked to the park and noticed everything, and so it's really a deep dive into noticing and presencing, and yes, sketching and writing and this and that, but it's really um, not going to the Louvre and going to all the
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
Paris sites. It's really just being present and celebrating
Wow.
life together. So it's a movable feast through the streets of Paris that we're going to be doing with the Hemingway family come this
Wow.
fall.
Wow. Well, I know I'm going to be getting a lot of questions, so I'm going to ask you now. Um, we obviously reach a ton of artists, creatives. If people are interested in getting on your mailing list, you have a link for that. So if people are
Yes,
interested in coming on this Hemingway retreat, like, is it for 10 people? Is it for 20? I mean, how many get to
it's
go?
for
I'm just curious.
20 actually.
20.
It's for
Okay.
20, the Heming.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 20.
Um,
Yeah, and it's a play test. It's our first one. Yeah.
Oh, and if there's a way to sign up. If you go to art2life.com and click on podcasts, all the links are there. Now, what about someone who has an idea? I know there's people listening who have a connection to sea turtles in Malaysia and have a whole idea. That's my idea, but I won't. But like, so do people write into you? How do you find
Yes, yeah,
these
yeah.
amazing jewels of creatives that become part of this wonder team for different experiences? I'm just,
Just very organically. So yes, they
uh-huh.
can write. There's a place where you can send us a note on our
Awesome.
website, and yeah, they come really organically. Like I meet the I mean, this it's talking. There's not strategy sessions. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I
Like
know.
I meet the
Right.
pie lady, and I'm like, I love this. I want to learn how to make pie. Let's do it. Let's try this out. So it's really organic, and we welcome collaborations with artists, and we go all
Oh
over
my
the
God.
world. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
and we are coming to
So
Paris.
cool.
So if there's any artists in Paris who are
There
interested
are.
in collaborating, okay,
Hmm.
wonderful, good. Thank you,
Barbara,
Nick. Thank you
listen,
so much.
thank you so much for this conversation, and more to come. And I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you guys, go ahead, check out all those links. And I will be seeing you next week on the podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Barbara, thanks again. More to come for sure.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Nick.